My name is Kathleen Chandler, and I work for the Independence Institute. You may know a little bit about who the Independence Institute is, and I'll tell you a little bit more about us. Our mission is to empower individuals and to educate citizens, legislators, and opinion makers about public policies that enhance personal and economic freedom. And so, yes, isn't it? I know. And so here I am educating citizens about personal and economic freedom. That is one of our mission statements. So that's what I get to do. I'm so privileged to really go around the state and find organizations, people, backyards, anybody that wants to hear about freedom and how we can help foster that freedom through education, but also through the different initiatives that we do at the Independence Institute. So we fight for freedom in the streets, and that means we're out there really working it. I mean, we're out here talking to citizens in the streets. What Garrett's doing, we're going to support him and his initiatives that he's doing. We're going to help other groups like Colorado Rising Action. They've got a petition that they're gathering signatures for that'll hopefully be on the ballot this year. So we're out there helping other organizations as well, not just the Independence Institute. Many of you might know who John Caldera is. He's my boss. And he is out there fighting in the streets. You might have heard his most recent antic, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but he actually sued the city of Boulder for the ban on assault weapons and won in the Colorado Supreme Court, which was phenomenal. But then what did the legislators do? They turned around and passed a law saying that once again, a home rule state or home rule city could override the state. And so even though we win, we don't end up winning. So we're going to have to continue to fight those battles even in the street. And then, of course, we fight in the State House. We fight legislation all the time. We are policy groups, education policy, Second Amendment, fiscal policy, healthcare, energy. We're always down at the State House fighting against the terrible, terrible legislation. However, we've discovered that we're not really moving the needle anymore down at the State House, and it's not for lack of trying, it's not for lack of information, but it's because there's just not enough persuadable people there anymore, right? Our state legislators are not on our side, they have no interest in being on our side, and so we are down there working what we can and helping those that will listen, but it's not really moving the needle. So the next two are really where we're at, right? We're doing it in the media. I don't know if any of you have heard of Complete Colorado, but if you have, it's our media arm. We actually at the Independence Institute own Complete Colorado.
I just did an article on the process initiative.
Oh, great! And did it get? It was published? Yeah, that's right. Mike Krause. He's our editor.
Who's the
Scott Weiser. Yeah, he's one of our reporters. We actually have two reporters. We're trying to hire a third, but we have one. It's kind of hard. I mean, Colorado's a big state, but we do have one kind of mid-Colorado north and one southern Colorado, kind of doing that local reporting, because we've noticed that there aren't any real local reporters anymore, right? They aren't doing those hyper-local stuff. So you aren't hearing about what's going on in Westminster or even Denver to a certain extent. I mean, it still makes the big news because it's the capital. But do we know that Westminster is facing a huge uproar with their trash hauling collection because they are trying to pass a single trash hauler? Do we know what's going on all of these hyper-local places? Thank you. And so that's one of the things we're fighting in the media. And so that has been a real wonderful thing. So go to Complete Colorado. They have an app. And on our page two is all of our original reporting. And on page 1, it's really a great aggregator of the entire state's news. So if you want to know what's going on in La Plata, Archuleta, Summit County, if you want to know what's going on around the state, that is a great place because we've noticed we've become too front range centric, and we are not bridging the urban-rural divide. Colorado is a square state. It has a front range and a southern or a western slope and an eastern slope, and we need to encompass the entire state. So by aggregating all of the news around the state, you can feel a part of Vail or Pueblo or wherever else, Lyman. So, and we're also trying to give a boost to those local papers that are doing the reporting in those local states. So, and the other really fun thing that we do, we just added this not too long ago, is called the Rocky Mountain Oyster. It is Colorado's take on the onion or the Babylon bee. And so if you want something really fun to look at that just pokes fun at everybody and everything, go to the Rocky Mountain Oyster and you'll see really hysterical, fun quips on there. And it, I don't know, I just, sometimes all the time, the left tends to be humorless, right? And we want to have fun. We want to make people realize that, being a conservative is not only the right mentality and the look for freedom, but it's also just flat out fun. We can laugh about things that the left thinks is, too serious. So the Rocky Mountain Oyster is a really fun place to look. And then, of course, on the ballot box, many of you know that Proposition 116, which was last year's tax cut, an actual rate reduction in our state income tax was passed by us. We got it on the ballot, we gathered signatures, and we passed it. And we're hoping in next year, in 2022, to have another ballot initiative to, again, lower the income tax rate. Our ultimate goal is to get that income tax rate to 0. And we figure if we do it a little bit at a time, because they keep getting more money, we'll continue to shrink the government, or at least keep it in line with the amount of revenue that they're taking, and we hope to someday get to a 0 income tax. There are 8 other states in the United States that have a 0 income tax, and it's really, property tax is happening this year, we hope, with Proposition, I don't remember the numbers, I don't know what the number is, but it's the ballot initiative that Michael Fields is running with the Colorado Rising Action. And they're going to lower, his proposal is to lower property tax, both commercial, residential, everything but, I think it's oil and gas. Yeah.
Is this statewide or just?
It is, statewide. All property taxes by 9%. So it's a huge tax deduction, but it's offset by the amount of money that they've received from COVID and all these other tax increases that they've come along with. Because of the way the legislature is scheduling things and moving things around, they're really, what we think is they're really taking advantage of the Taxpayer Bill of Rights definitions. And the Supreme Court has been very favorable, again, something that we are trying to fight against. The Supreme Court has never been in our favor. So that's one of the things we are definitely fighting. So the ballot initiatives is something that we're very good at. We've had lots of success either in fighting ballot initiatives and or proposing ballot initiatives. Here's a little side note just for you. If you see anything on your ballot with a letter, that means it's a referred measure, whether it's a local referred measure or if it's a state referred measure, which means somebody on high, your politicians, have proposed it. So my vote is always no. So see a letter, vote no. If it's a number, it means it's citizen-led. So it might or might not be good, right? It means citizens, like what Garrett's doing, is rising up, they're gathering signatures, and they're going to propose it. So I always tell people, letters are bad. Numbers are good. Well, mostly good, right? There's always going to be some of those weird ones out there that you don't want. But always vote no on a letter. It's good.
Unless
good
we
to
somehow
know.
get elected again and we start having Republican politicians back in office.
True. But the only reason they're referring something, and that's unusual, but that's awesome, because sometimes if you have that judicial performance committee, that's the way to get them not to run. But it's very rare that they will do that. I mean,
when are we going to see lawsuits opposing the gas stuff?
that is something we are working on right now. In fact, we had a staff meeting Monday, and Shane is coming up with some creative ways to figure out how to start to do that, because they're actually parsing it out, and they're going to add an additional fee on it so that it raises it without a vote of the people, because they're adding it to an existing, I'm not sure how they worded it, but it's something where they can add it to something that's already existing, therefore it doesn't have to be voted on. And that's how they get away with stuff like this. So we're fighting very, very much on the court side. So that's an overview of who we are as the Independence Institute. We are a nonprofit organization. We rely on good people like you for donations. We do a lot of applying for grants, but mostly it's just good, hardworking people at $50 a month or whatever you can afford that helps us fight the good fight. As a think tank, we really want to make sure that our scholarship is good so that when we pass that on to you as a citizen, you have good information and you know what you're talking about so that you can actually have a great conversation with your neighbor or with someone in policy, a state house representative or a senator, because that's what we're doing is we're trying to influence them, right? But we've discovered that culture really comes before legislature. They are a reflection of culture. So if we can change the culture into more of a freedom mindset, then we'll elect more freedom-oriented people. So we are decided to start backing up because, again, we're not being able to persuade those at the state house because the culture's not there yet. So when I come and talk to people like you, we're hoping that we move that culture, give you some talking points, help you to be able to formulate some ideas so that when you talk to your neighbor, person in grocery store line, or wherever you happen to be, you can interject the ideas of freedom, not force. I tell people there's 2 F words in life, right? The F words of freedom and force. Are you a freedom person or are you a force person? And government is nothing but force because that's all they have. They can force you to do something by taxation or by incarceration or other ways that they can force you. We want to have freedom, which means I have the ability to think and do for myself. So it's kind of the overview of who we are. So why are you essential to liberty? Well, liberty is taken away when we don't stop the overreach of government, right? Government is supposed to be so big and no bigger. But unfortunately, we've allowed government to keep expanding and expanding and expanding. And because of that, government now is in every aspect of our life because we haven't stopped its overreach. We are the ones who can limit it. So why are you essential? Well, you need to get involved. We don't get involved because we don't think we can. We don't think we have time. We might not understand enough. But here's the deal. If you are a thinking person and you understand the fact that freedom and force and what government's going to do, then that's the way that you can get involved and stop the overreach of government, right? So what's at stake? Your liberty today and the future of Colorado, the future of our United States. But let's break that down. Let's go county by county. Let's go by city, right? The ordinance that you're trying to repeal is a restriction on people's private property rights. I mean, that's important in the city of Denver. I mean, how micro can you get?
Technically, you're not trying. Could that not be appealed to the state court? Or
Well,
is it not worth it?
It's not worth it. Unfortunately, we have found that if you appeal something and it just gets confirmed, that's even more entrenched. And you've just spent thousands of dollars, etc. So we are now not suing as much as we used to. We're being strategic about it so that we can find sympathetic judges, but we're finding the vote of the people tends to be better.
It doesn't garner public support.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, we all do not like Governor Polis, but to recall him is futile because you're going to spend millions of dollars recalling him and probably not win and embolden him, and who are you going to replace him with? I mean, we have to think about those things before you spend all your energy and time and money on something that is probably going to fail. So let's be strategic, and that's one of the good things about the Independence Institute is we really work on strategy. I always tell people we're kind of like, the swamp fox. In the American Revolution, there was a whole band that was fight in the cornfields, and they would shoot and shoot and shoot, and then they would disappear into the swamp, right? Because that's what they could do. And they were having a huge effect on the guerrilla warfare back in the Revolutionary War. And that's what we need to do. We need to start that guerrilla warfare again.
But what about concentrating on less?
A whole class on boards and commissions. People don't think about boards and commissions, and that is the training ground for the takeover of your local government. If you were to get on the Planning and Zoning Commission, or if you were to get on your Citizen Budget Advisory Commission, if you were to get on your local school board commission, you could start affecting the policies in those, and you could change the culture, and then from there, you can start making a difference by grooming other candidates to run for higher office. Here's an example. I had a wonderful man. His name is... Absolutely, they get started on a school board. I had a wonderful man. His name was Don Sheehan. He was on the senior commission. He came to my class, I don't know, probably 5 years ago now, and asked about getting on a commission. He got on the senior commission in the city of Centennial. He served faithfully for 2 years. He loved it. He did a great job. Well, guess what? His seated city council member decided not to run and asked Don if he'd be willing to run, because Don had proved himself. He was a good worker. He knew the ins and outs. He had all of a sudden this instantaneous kind of a group that supported him. And Don called me up and I said, sure, let's work on a campaign for you. And he automatically kind of had this infrastructure in place, which is one of the strategies that the left has been using for years. They build a permanent grassroots infrastructure, right? And then all of a sudden Don got elected, and Don is a seated city council member today in the city of Centennial, because he started out about 5 years ago on the senior commission. That is what we need to do. We need to get these people that are good involved in a commission, that they can start getting their name recognition and building up their name brand, and then all of a sudden when they run, the people around them don't see them as an R or a D, but see them as a good worker, a good colleague, someone who's going to work hard and has good ideas, right? Because we do have the best ideas for the most people. Ideas of freedom is going to satisfy everyone along the way. And if we can communicate that in a better way. So the left, they have that. They have a training ground. They have I don't know if you've heard of the group called Emerge Colorado. There's Emerge nationwide, but Emerge Colorado, it's a training ground on the left for women to get radicalized. They start out in the school districts, and they work the PTA, and the next thing you know, they sit for the school board, and the next thing so if you've ever heard of Faith Winters, right? She is one of our state legislators. She started out as an Emerge candidate, and she is now running for, and who knows, she could be tapped. I believe Jana Griswold might have done something similar to that, where she started out on all these lower things, kind of built that name recognition. People saw her and they groomed her, filled her with ideas, and trained her. And now she's our Secretary of State. And so we need to start getting involved at that local level. We need to have grassroots politics infrastructure. And we need to bring others into the discussion, because so oftentimes can be a little bit of our political elite, even on the right. They don't always let those from the workers like us have a discussion. And so we need to kind of change that mindset. And we need to groom those volunteers that are ready to run for office. Whereas us on the right, what we do is we set up that reset button, right? Every 2 to 4 years, you get a new chairman.
True.
And then you have to deal with what the previous chairman did, and you got to clean up their mess, and you're on this vicious cycle every 2 to 4 years, because you know what? We're going to hate you in 2 years. You know what I'm saying? They don't look at it as a long-term kind of thing, and we should. We should look at it as an investment, not just, we don't like that guy, he's out. Because it's not about who's going to be here to save the day today. It's going to be who's going to save the day in the future as well. And we don't do that by building that grassroots infrastructure. And we complain, right? If it doesn't go well, we complain, and then we say they're out. And we just sit around and complain. I'm a Colorado native. And when I was a kid, in the Denver Post one year, they sent along this Bronco brick. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's this little foam brick. Howard Cosell, back in the day, they were talking about this Bronco brick, and it was a foam thing, and it came in the newspaper. And when the Broncos were doing horrible, what did you do? Throw the brick at the TV, right? Did that make the Broncos do any better? No. The Broncos still stunk it up, right? But we felt better because we got to throw a brick at it. That is what we've been doing for far too long. We've been complaining, and not doing anything about it, but yelling and screaming. And we do it at the TV, whoever, on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever. And instead, take that energy and think about how you can craft a message so that you can persuade someone else, not just yell at them. Because they don't want you to yell at them, and frankly, I don't want to be yelled at either. So if we have this culture of just being mad at each other, no one is going to be able to persuade anybody. So we don't want to hit that reset button every 2 years. We don't want to have to start over. We want to have a permanent grassroots infrastructure, which is why the Independence Institute is now 36 years old this year. We've been building these infrastructures. Complete Colorado, our media arm, our courts that we've been, our law center, our Second Amendment Center, all of these things over years, so that when people come to us, we have it, right? We can be the go-to for them. So it's going to take a generational change in order to kind of filter that back. We've been complacent for too long, way too long. I always say that Mayberry RFD, right, Aunt B, was probably on the library board, right? And when she was on the library board, what did she do? She learned everything that was going on in the community. She knew who the players were. And when she knew everything that was going on, she came home and she told Andy and Opie, and she told everybody about what was going on, right? And she taught Andy and Opie what it meant to be a citizen, what it meant to be involved, who the players were in the community. I mean, she was just there. And she was kind of the go-to lady, right? We don't do that anymore. We don't teach our children or our neighbors or anyone about civics. And we expect what? The school district to do that? No. They're not going to do it the way we would do it. They're not going to tell the good things about the American experiment, right? They're only going to tell the things that they want to edit to their advantage. So it's going to take a generational change, and we're going to have to work really hard in order to continue to get that mindset back to freedom and not force. So it will take time and effort to combat that mindset. So community service is essential. We have to have volunteers that come and sign petitions or maybe walk their neighborhood. But we also need volunteers to get involved in local government. We need volunteers to go testify down at the Capitol. We need people to be part of the Lincoln Club, right, George? Where you can give your $25 or your $50 and it goes to helping candidates. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we need to be involved in. And it will never happen if we don't get involved. Stop complaining and take back your country by taking back your local government. That's where we're at. So I'm going to ask you to think about this question. What is the proper role of government?
It's clearly to provide free health care.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly right, yeah.
It's to prevent against chaos.
Well, I think there's actually only two roles of the government in general. One is roads and bridges, so infrastructure, right? I cannot build a road. I cannot build a bridge, so that's not something I could do as an individual, right? So government must come along and build those things. And the other is for my defense, whether that's national defense, like I cannot raise an army. I cannot necessarily, I can individually protect my home with my Second Amendment. With my Second Amendment right, but I can't raise a standing army, a National Guard or something like that. So really, if we brass tacks the role of government, it's only two things, those two things. Everything else is up for discussion.
What about ports?
Ports? What do you mean? Like
the
shipping
port of
ports?
entries, Yeah.
Well,
Borders.
that could be kind of national defense, like, border control. We have to have a sovereign nation, right? So that's national defense of all kinds. That has to deal with immigration, making sure that we're safe, an Air Force, a Navy, all those kinds of things. But everything else is truly up for discussion.
Then
Right?
I handle chaos. I like it.
Well, because if you think about it, if we discuss it, then we know its role. So I would ask you, if you ask your neighbor, if they come up with something and say, yeah, it is the role of government to provide me with health care. You can ask them, really, why is it the government's role to do that? Why should they provide health care?
So one of them is going to say health is your right.
Yeah, and you're going to say, no, it's not, because I can provide that for myself. So it's all about the individual and what is not the individual's role. The individual is to take care of everything else. It's the role of government. Good example is it the role of government to tell me to wear a helmet or not?
No.
No, it's not. If I want to wear a helmet, then I can wear a helmet. Is it the role of government to tell me what size soda pop I should be drinking? No, it's up to me as an individual. So we need to decide what is the role of government, and then we can argue all of those nuances, because government should only do the things that I cannot do as an individual. Everything else is left up to government, which is roads and bridges and pretty much national defense or some kind of other standing army. And I think that's really the framework we need to kind of pull into, because if we let government mitigate our risk, then we've abdicated ourselves. So,
And they don't do anything very well.
no, I mean, think about the
They
whole...
just do a poor job at
Exactly.
mitigating our risk.
Well, think about the mask. Is it right for government to mitigate my risk? What if I don't mind being at risk for COVID because I think my risk is low? Why should government mandate that I mitigate to their risk level? Should I, again, seatbelt? That's my risk if I want to wear one or not wear one. My risk if I want to, become obese by drinking a gallon of soda every day. That's my risk. So we need to ask, is it up to government to mitigate risk? Because some people's risk tolerance is very high and some is very low. But if government mandates it, then everybody's the same. And the object here is not to be the same, it's to be individualized. Because, again, your risk level is different than my risk level, right? My risk level of getting health care, maybe I think I'm very healthy, so I want a high deductible. If I think I'm at a higher risk for something, I might get a different policy. But that's up to me to decide. It's not up to government. Do I want to cover abortion? Not abortion. Do I want to cover contraception? Not contraception. It's up to me. It's not up to government, because that's my risk level. So that's the question to really ask, is whatever it is, whatever government's trying to do to you, is that its proper role? Should government be doing that? Should government not be doing that? That's the criteria. And if you ask that question, it's not a left question, it's not a right question, it's a question. You're not going to upset somebody if you ask that question. You're not going to get them mad at you. You're going to get them thinking. And our mantra at Independence Institute is think freedom. So if you ask this question, you're going to get them to think about the role of government, thus the freedom you receive as a citizen and the role that government will take in your life. So if you've got a niece, a nephew, a neighbor, and they're telling you something, you should ask, hey, do you think that's really the role that government should have? You might have them go, I never really thought about it. I just kind of went along with it that government health care is a right. And I never really thought about, should they? Right? It's a should government do. What is its role? And again, that's not a left question or a right question. It's a question of freedom. And that's the question we should be asking our neighbor a lot.
I think from an economic point of view, it colors everything.
Absolutely. And that could be a good discussion point. Is it the role of government to manipulate the markets like that? Is it the role of government to continue to print money? Is it the role of government to hand out this money to you and you and you and not you and you and you? And that means the government has picked the winners and the losers, right? It's not the role of government to pick winners and losers. It's the role of government to be equal, not equitable, right? Equitable means everyone has the same outcome. Equality means everybody has the same beginning, right? So when you hear somebody talking about equity and equity markets and equity, this amount of money and that's an outcome. We don't want everybody to be the same in outcome.
But how do you argue equality and say saying everyone starts from the same beginning. It's really not the case.
I think it really is the case. I really think, because here's where we all become equal. Every one of us has opportunity, and every one of us is human. And those are the basics. That's why it's all men are created equal, right? Where in our humanness, we all have potential. Now, the potential is the equity part. They want everybody's potential to be the same. It's not. I'm never going to be good at basketball because I'm only 5'2", right? But why should I be? I'm never going to be. But yet I should be paid the same as a basketball player, or I should have the same opportunities? No, because I'm not the same. But I still, in my humanness, I'm no different than, let's say, Shaquille O'Neal, right? So we need to talk about our humanness and not our equity at the end. It's not about outcome, it's about beginning. And I believe in the United States of America, everyone has the same beginning.
I agree with you, but that's such a tough point to make with
It is.
millennial left-wing friends, and I don't know how to do it.
The best way to do is just ask them questions.
No, so,
Yeah, that's right. Just asking them questions, right?
so then you enter in 2% of his income in tax, or 3% of his income in tax. It's nowhere near where his employees pay 40%. You know.
But do you know why that's true, though? Because Jeff Bezos makes most of his money not on income, but on his investments. And so you need to say. Yeah, so I mean, do you tax investments? I mean, I think.
Tax law in the United States is so important to
Having a free market.
It's interesting you should say that. I just got back this last week from an American for Tax Reform conference, and Robert Bork Jr., the son of the late Supreme Court nominee Robert Bork, Robert Bork, the senior, he wrote a book on antitrust, and his son just revisited it and wrote it, and he lectured on antitrust, and it's a fascinating book. I was like, the type is this big, and it's like full of tons of information, so it's going to take me years probably to get through it, but it's pretty cool because you're right, the idea of antitrust is actually coming back because of that. The fame, Facebook.
Friends, often it's, free market capitalism versus the eating from the smaller pie from the floor.
But that goes back to this question, right back to you. It's not a level playing field because of government. Government is the one that is picking the winners and the losers through manipulation of tax code, through manipulation of all of these, and they say, well, you, Walmart, can stay open, but you, little mom and pop shop, can't. You, Home Depot, can stay open. Oh, but the little Ace Hardware down the street has to close. You, little winery, can't stay open, but some other big restaurant chain can. So that is the problem. It's not what we think of as the problem. It's government is in the way, and it is picking the winners and the losers. Yeah. Therefore, everything is distorted down the line. So it's really about what is the role of government. Should government be telling us what to do and not to do, with everything from a winery being open when we need to be open, to school districts and what they should do with their funding, every aspect of it is what is government telling you to do. And therefore, we need to say, no, that's not the role of government. The role is for me as an individual to take back my government so that I'm in control.
I mean, it's also important that we understand that the role of government is what level of role, which part of government is getting involved.
And that's why another point here is federalism. If at any given point the United States starts to do everything from the top down, that's why I was so concerned about Joe Biden's mask mandate, because the minute you start to do stuff from the top, you cannot move, right? Part of the great experiment in the United States is if you don't like what's going on in your community, you fight, you try. If you still don't like it, you move. But if there's no place left in the United States to move because everything is the same, we're done. Like, if Texas is going to end up like New York, and New York's going to end up like California, and California's going to end up like Colorado, then we're in no better place. So that's why we're these United States of America. It's for a reason. I like Colorado. I don't like California. I don't want to live in New York. I don't want to live in Alaska. Not only because of the climate, but because of the politics. that is really why we need to fight for Colorado. Because in the end, it is about that same idea that eventually if the world starts pushing down, we're not going to be able to ever live and move where we want as private citizens.
Not to mention it's going to be uncomfortable because federalism is really the only way that we know to effectively manage large state apparatuses.
Absolutely,
And that's why
absolutely.
even Russia is a federation because it's so large. The only large country that isn't.
Why can't I let him in and give him free money? and
Because
let him
that
go?
is the role of the federal government. There are certain roles of the federal government, certain roles of a state government, certain roles of a local government, and we need to know those rules. And if if you want your local government to do something for you, then you can petition them to do it. But it shouldn't be petitioned all the way at the state or the national. It needs to be funneled down so that everyone's got their own role, so that we know where we can move to and what we can fight for. So if California is going to continue to do that, then that's when the federal government, i.e. Donald Trump, came in and said, hey, look, we're going to stop funding sanctuary states. We're going to stop doing this because that is a national issue. But if there's something going on in your local area, well, that's up to you.
It's more than just a national issue. I mean, it's an issue like immigration. It is the role of the federal government, specifically the executive, to deal with foreign powers.
Yeah,
Right.
but that's what
That falls into
the
our-
Arizona people said like 10 years ago. And the
Blue as well, or it's on the cusp of turning blue.
We'll see.
So we'll see, yeah. So the idea here is we need to stop complaining and take back our country by taking back our community. That's what we really need to do. We need to stop this echo chamber of blah, 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 and do something about it. Because the more we complain, what? We're throwing that Bronco brick, right? And nothing's happening. Nothing's changing. So here's what I'm going to ask you to also. Control what you can control and move on when you can't. Here's the Washington State, or the national capital in Washington, D.C. Here's Colorado. Do you think that the Department of Education knows what in the heck or what's going on or what the needs are of Simla, Colorado in the one-room schoolhouse? No. So Simla, Colorado knows what's best for them in their one-room schoolhouse. The Department of Education doesn't care. It is 2,000, 3,000 miles away, and they have no concept of what's going on here. So we need to control what we can and let go if we can't. So if we go and yell constantly at Joe Biden, do you think you can knock on his door? No. But you could probably knock on your mayor. You could knock on his door. You could go to your city council meeting. You could shake their hand. You can go to your county commissioner meeting. You could go to a school board meeting. You could look these people in the eye and say, hey, look, I'm voting for you. How many of us vote for people and then we forget their names? But we do know Nancy Pelosi's name. Do we know our own local official? Right? So why are we so focused on something we cannot control? The national government, I'm sorry, but Joe Biden's not going to listen to me. But I might be able to sway my county commissioners. I'm going to go to a meeting and I'm going to have 50 of my friends and we're going to show up and potentially, sway some votes. So let's control what we can control and let go of what we can't. Because again, if we can change the culture here, it will swell up. Government is always lagging indicator of culture. Always. Culture changes them. We need to change our culture so therefore we can change the national narrative. So just remember, let go. Man, stop yelling at Fox News all the time, or CNN, or MSNBC, or whatever. Stop, tweeting against somebody you're never going to meet, and talk to your neighbor. So, I want you to know I'm a resource. This is our team. There's Mr. Caldera, and that's Dave Copel and all the others on our team. Call me with questions. If you've got a question about policy, or if you've got a question about something you need, I'm a resource. I don't know it all, but I'll tell you I know people who do. I have lots of smart people that I work with. So if you need something, call me. If you've got an idea, call me. If you want to float an idea for Complete Colorado, call me. I'm going to be a resource for you. If you don't understand something, if you get appointed to a board or a commission, call me. I'll be happy to help you. I had a woman several years ago who was on the Lowry Redevelopment Board. She moved into Lowry right when it was getting started, got on their board, And one commission meeting, she said, they're going to talk about bike lanes. She goes, I don't know anything about bike lanes. I said, well, I don't either, but guess what? We have Randall O'Toole, who is a transportation expert. He knows everything about bike lanes. He actually wrote a book on bike lanes. And so I connected the two of them. He answered every question she had about bike lanes. So when she went to that commissioner meeting, she knew what the heck she was talking about.
The expert.
Yeah, because the only people that are going to feed you information generally are your city liaison, your bureaucrat, and they generally have either a hidden agenda or frankly they're lazy, so they don't give you all the information because there's no incentive for them to do a good job, right? They're going to get paid whether they do a good job or not. So the idea here is to give you information so that when you go to a commission meeting, you are the expert and you can help inform the people around you. So water policy, education policy, I mean, we have experts in all of those fields, and I want you to be armed.
So can I ask a question though? Why isn't like the Republican Party, like why isn't the Republican Party just doing this spontaneously on its own?
Because they don't have the resources and they are concerned about getting Republicans elected. We're not concerned about getting Republicans elected. That's not our job. We're a nonpartisan think tank who is on freedom. So that's their job. Our job is to support people and to help people so that we can move towards freedom.
But doesn't, from sprout off this question, don't the Democrats basically have somebody doing what you're doing on their side?
They do, and that's again the brassers. Hey, good to see you, Rick. That's why we on the right need to build that permanent grassroots infrastructure because we don't have that. But the way we're going to get it is they have funders who create these classes that aren't necessarily through the Democrat Party, but they're grooming them to be Democrats. We don't have that. We don't want to groom people to be Republicans. We want to groom people to think about freedom. Because I'm telling you what, freedom is going to outlast the Republican Party. Because the Republican Party, not to disparage what Garrett's doing, is about a person, electability. It's about that instead of ideas, and we're about ideas. So the thing is here to get you to think about freedom so you can challenge those that you're electing about ideas.
What organizations are similar to yours on the left?
Emerge, have you heard about that group?
Okay, that's the one you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
Okay, Emerge.
And there are probably a half dozen other ones out there, but Emerge is the biggest one in Colorado.
Okay.
And they...
Something that maybe we should look out for and maybe learn from?
Well, we are,
Okay.
but the problem is we just don't have the big funders, right?
Okay.
It takes a lot of money to do this. So,
This is where the super elite comes.
Wes, like super elite.
Super
You're
elite
so
come
right.
in, and they fund all these
Right.
independent organizations.
Right. So that's what we do. I don't have the money, but I have all of you, right? And you're going to build the Army for Freedom. And the Army for Freedom requires foot soldiers and generals and everybody in between. And I'm trying to groom the foot soldiers because you're going to be talking to your neighbor. So that's who I am. There's my information. You can call me, text me, email me, ask me about other speakers, information. I'm here as a resource. And so my job as the coalitions manager is to put everybody together. That's what I do. Yes.
Can you talk more about your class?
Sure. My class, I have actually two of them now. One is called the Local Government Project, where I actually teach people how to apply and get on boards and commissions. What does it look like? How to apply? Where to go? All that. Because we've discovered that the first step is often the hardest. It's that barrier to entry, and it takes a little bit of courage. And sometimes we don't have a lot of courage, so I'm just there to help you. So I can sit down with you and help you fill out an application. I help you look through and find a board or a commission that might have an opening. And we have identified over 4,000 boards and commissions just in the Front Range. There are over 30 in the city of Denver alone. That doesn't include fire districts, library districts, metro districts, every water district, any kind of district you can think of, park and rec. These all have boards and commissions that support them, that are housed with volunteer citizens that advise some entity and help make policy. So I teach you how to do that, give you the courage, give you the information to do that. The other class that I'm starting, which I'm hopefully going to have launched in July, is a communications class. And it's called Standing Up and Speaking Out. And it's how do I write a 30-second elevator speech? How do I talk to my neighbor over a fence? What do I say to my niece at Thanksgiving who's a liberal? What do I say when someone asks me, what do you think about government doing that? So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how to write an op-ed. I'm getting a lot of people that want to write, but
July?
yeah, in July.
What date?
July 10th, I'm hoping.
Okay.
So if you want, email me and I'll make sure you get on the list. Speaking up and standing up and speaking out, it's a practical class. You know, how do I write a good op-ed so that, you know, I can be that person in the newspaper? How do I persuade? So it's about persuasion. Again, we don't want to beat people over the head because it's, if you only know what I know, you'd believe what I believe.
That's what happened to us for the last 15, 16 months. Beat over the head with the quasi.
That could use some serious help.
Absolutely.
With a big grip.
Yeah.
How come you're using the term communications instead of advocacy?
Because
The reason I ask that is because communication sounds like, you know, I don't want to learn how to learn to telephone sales calls. But if you do advocacy, that's like, oh, well, that spurs another question. And the reason, and I've also been in advocacy training for like other nonprofit groups. That's the kind of the general.
yeah, that's probably a good word to use. Although I think the reason we're probably not using that strong of a term, although that's a good term, is because people are not courageous. So if they feel like they have to advocate, that means that they're going to have to do. You know, it's kind of scary. So if I can tell you how to talk to your neighbor, that's a little bit, because one of the sections I'm teaching in this class is courage, right? We have a whole generation of kids and people that are not courageous anymore. Yes?
Just time.
Oh, time, sorry. Should I be done?
I'm
Look,
going to wrap it up.
done! There it is.
All right, thank you. Sorry.